Hello and welcome to the Dossal One Gaming Sports Drop. Today we're going to be looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers 2021 win-loss record. We're going to be using our tier maker friend. This is going to be where I feel like 90% chance or higher that we're going to win that game. Likely win is obviously between like 50 and 89% confident that we're going to win that game. Split, that's only going to be for the three teams in our conference anyways. But that's where I really feel heavily that we're going to just split the series with that team. Likely loss, again, a very confident loss. And just putting a straight loss is, I really don't see a way the Steelers can match up against this team at all at this point. So let's start off first home game of the season, the Raiders. I want to go solid win. Yeah, we're going to go solid win, actually. I don't think there's only really going to be maybe two of these, spoiler alert. But I do see the Raiders being a team that just doesn't match up well against the Steelers. If this was an away game, it might be a likely win, but with it being a home game, I think we definitely have it in the bag. So Raiders, week 2, that is going to be a win. Denver Broncos, that's going to be a likely win. I like what they're doing. They're trying to give Drew Lock some competition at quarterback. Their defense is going to be good. Their offense is going to be better. They're a team that will be better than what they were in 2020. They had some of the worst luck with COVID in 2020. I think they were starting a wide receiver at quarterback one week. It was a really, really rough year for them, and they still didn't finish terribly. So they're a solid team. If Drew Lock takes a step forward, or if he gets pushed out of the starting quarterback spot, then that could be a team that's borderline playoff. I still think we're going to beat them. I think we have the edge there, but it's a pretty close one. Next up is the Seahawks. That's a likely loss. Just quarterback to quarterback, which is always the most important position on the field. Russell Wilson is pretty comparable to Ben when they were both in their prime, but Russell's still in his prime and Ben's not. That's really going to be the difference. I think this game's a little later in the season too, so there's always a chance that Ben's injured by then. That's always a possibility with Ben, unfortunately, is that he may be injured by then and either playing on a gimpy knee like he was in the second half last year, which I think really affected him. You can't plant, you can't throw accurately or with a lot of velocity when you have a gimpy knee. So yeah, I think Seahawks is going to be a likely loss. Chicago, they're really a 50-50 team. I'd almost put split if I'd put that as like a tie or a toss-up game. I'll give the Steelers the win, and I'm really trying to be optimistic if I'm giving them the win against Chicago. If Fields is starting by that time, it's a loss. I have a feeling he will be. If it's Dalton starting at that point, then we'll win. And we got to hope that's the scenario if you're a Steelers fan, because if Fields surpasses Dalton by that point and he's playing well, they've got a good wide receiver. They've got a great defense, good run game. And if they've got a good quarterback, they're going to beat us. It's just that simple. I still think they might be trying to ease Fields in. That's what a lot of coaching staffs do with a rookie year, especially when playoff implications aren't real high for that team. So hopefully that's a win, but that's a very, very sketchy win, if anything. Detroit, they're a terrible team. Um, I wish I could be nicer to them. Brand new coaching staff. They got rid of the best quarterback they've had in 20 years for a quarterback who might be okay. I mean, Goff did go to the playoffs last year. He played well with a broken thumb in the playoffs last year, but he's horribly inconsistent. He'll put up Pro Bowl numbers one week and then look like a completely lost kid in the next week. Um, with him going to a more subpar team that doesn't have the NFL's best defense backing him up now, yeah, that's gonna be a rough. These guys might be the number one overall pick next year, so that's a pretty easy win for the win column for the Steelers. Titans, that's a likely loss. This is a team that I think is about even with us as far as talent goes. We beat them last year with a little bit of luck and a lot of assistance from COVID. I don't think we beat them twice in a row. They got a little bit better in the offseason. We got a little bit worse. They got one of our better defenders. Whether you like or love Bud Dupree, he added a lot. And once he went out last year, their defense really took a big step backwards. So while I do think they overpaid to bring Bud Dupree in, he's still a heck of a player, and he's going to increase the pass rush for that team, which was the only thing that they really needed. Otherwise, they're a very complete team on offense. They have a good backfield in the defense. If they have a pass rush, they're going to be a playoff team, and I don't think we're going to beat them 2 times in a row, especially without COVID helping us out there. Now we're going to get into the conference games where, I mean, we'll just take the surprise out of it. I think we're going to split and go 3-3. The Bengals have definitely gotten better, especially since we played them the second time. They're actually going to have a competent quarterback who's in year 2, who has a full off season. Joe Burrow came in last year and did well when he didn't have an off season and blew his knee out early. If he has a full off season and doesn't have a terrible knee injury, that's a team that's going to be leaps better than what they were. They also landed a generational wide receiver in the draft who Joe Burrow is already familiar with because they played together in LSU in college. It's a team. I've seen some predictions on which team might go worst to first in their division, and Bengals actually led that poll. I was surprised, but there's a real possibility they're a playoff team this year with Burrow not getting injured 2 years in a row. That would be unlikely. With him having a full off season to learn the playbook, and him bringing in a wide receiver he's already massively comfortable with. I think when they played together in 2019, they had something like 20 touchdowns together. It was absolutely insane when they were together in college. If they put up 2/3 of that and they're putting up, 12, 13 touchdowns with his top receiver, it's over. The Bengals are going to take a huge step forward. We'll be lucky to split with them with what I think is going to happen to our defense. The Baltimore Ravens, I think they're about the same as last year. They have some good additions, but they also lost 2 of their key defenders, Judon and Ngakwe. I'm probably saying that name wrong, but they did bring him in right before the trade deadline. He was a dangerous pass rusher. He definitely did some damage in one of the games against us. I don't think he had a whole lot of numbers, but he was definitely putting up pressure and breaking through the O line, and that causes bad throws even when it doesn't get sacks. They brought in some talent. They lost their starting offensive tackle and they're both their starting linebackers, but they had a good draft and they brought some people in. I don't think they're going to be quite as good as they were last year, but they're still going to be solid. I say we split with them. If they hadn't lost Judon and Ngakwe, I would have probably put them as winning both games and probably in the green category as well. But with the losses they took, I think we're going to split with them again, home and away. We win home, they win away. Browns are probably going to be the team that wins the division this year. They basically lost no one. They've signed a lot of good free agents. They had a good draft, and they beat us last year. They beat the Steelers last year, not us. I'm not a Steeler. They beat the Steelers last year with their head coach with COVID coaching from his basement. Tomlin got annihilated. I could probably do a whole video on how much I think Tomlin's overrated and how much he shouldn't have a job, but he got out coached from a sick coach in his basement when Tomlin was perfectly healthy on the sideline, able to kind of read the game far, far better than someone coaching off of their TV set. I think that was an insane loss. I thought that would have lost Tomlin his job, the fact that he got out coached from someone's basement, but it didn't. That blows my mind. Cleveland has added talent on top of that. Unless they take a massive step backwards, unless Baker Mayfield takes a massive step backwards, unless something absolutely implodes chemistry wise inside that team, I don't see how they don't at least split with us. I could honestly see them sweeping us and it wouldn't be a surprise, but I could still also see us sweeping the Bengals if something goes wrong there. So that's why I'm going to keep it at a 3-3 record and just say we split all 3 opponents. But if anyone's going to sweep us this year, it's going to be the Browns. I mean, they beat us so badly in the playoffs last year. It was embarrassing. I mean, I almost feel happy for them because they've been bad for so long. If it wasn't us, if they had beaten anyone else in the playoffs that handily, I would have been happy for them. Just seeing a team that has been so bad for so long actually have a dominant playoff win would have been a cool story if it wasn't against my personal favorite team. So they're going to be the division winner this year. I'm almost positive of that. The Steelers we're the reigning division winners, so I don't want to count us out completely. I don't want to count Baltimore out completely, but Cleveland's definitely got to be, as far as talent on paper, they've got to be the lead in the beginning of the year. All right, so this looks good so far. This is our home games and our conference games. Doesn't look too bad. Now we get to our away games. And this is where the season starts really getting bad. So Buffalo, they beat us pretty handily last year. I think they honestly got better. They had some key additions this year when we had a lot of key losses. I'll go over those losses, who I think is really going to make this team, who this team's really going to miss, that we let go from 2020 to 2021. But there's quite a few of them that we lost. They didn't lose anyone. Their young quarterback's got another year in his pocket at this point. I think he's going to maybe take a small step up as far as his abilities and his leadership and overall intangibles. I can't see us winning this game unless something massively, massively unforeseen happens. I can't see how we win it. I just can't. Green Bay, the only way we win against Rodgers is if Rodgers isn't playing in Green Bay. And if he's not, his most likely destination is in Denver. They've been making a strong play on him basically since there was even a rumor that he might be available. If he goes to Denver, then these two games just swap. It's not going to help us out in the win loss ratio unless it somehow happens in between games. I haven't looked at the schedule deep enough to see if that'd even be a possibility. But I mean, that would be swell for us. But even if we sneak into the playoffs this year, it's not going to end well. Like, let's not kid ourselves. So we're going to lose to Rodgers. Green Bay is a much better team than us. Rodgers is in the back half of his prime, but he's still in his prime. I mean, he's an MVP level player. I wish I could say the same about Ben. I've always been a huge Ben fan, even when he has controversies early in his career with him acting like a child, with some of the off the field stuff he had. I always supported him. I wish I could support Ben at age 40 being our starting quarterback. I can't. I thought he should have retired. I think at this point he's going to hold our team back this year. The offense we're trying to put in is more of a run and gun offense, and Ben can't run and he can't gun. He can check down and he can make smart reads. There's no way we beat Aaron Rodgers. It isn't happening. Chargers likely loss. And here's where I'm going to be a little critical of the Steelers and maybe a little complimentary towards the Chargers. This is also an away game. If this was a home game, it would be a likely win. I think this is one of those few games where it's going to come down to a couple of not fluke plays, but lucky plays, almost how Tennessee and Baltimore's games went down last year. Chargers have a rookie of the year quarterback last year who's got now a full off season to work with. They drafted and filled their biggest position of need, which was left tackle. They had a kid fall to them that should never have fell that far, but he did. This is a team that is, in my opinion, going to be in the playoffs this year, while we are not. So just that kind of dynamic alone would be they would probably beat us, right? If they're a playoff team and we're not really a playoff team this year. I just don't see it. I don't see a win there. Maybe some people will say we beat the Chargers. I think we've had a pretty good success rate against them since we've drafted Ben and they had Philip Rivers, but this isn't the Philip Rivers Chargers anymore. This is the Justin Herbert Chargers, and they're just a different team under Justin, and we're not going to beat them. Likely win against the Vikings. They're a good team. They're a borderline playoff team. So I don't want to put this as a solid win. There's still a possibility on this one, just like there is with any of the likely wins, just like there is with any of the likely losses. Actually, we're just going to go ahead. We're going to say that's a solid L. I don't see that being a possibility of even a likely loss. Yeah. So Vikings, we could win this one. I would say if I were going to put like a percentage on it, because this is kind of what we're doing with these odds brackets, 55% win, 45% loss. I have very little confidence in this, but I do think we still have a better quarterback situation than they do. It's one of the few teams I can say that about. I think our defenses are both good, not great this year. I think really it's going to come down to our run game. I think with Najee Harris, we're going to beat them on the ground, and that's really what it's going to come down to this year because they've got just as good of a receiver as we do. I think they even added another really good receiver in the offseason. The receiver escapes my mind right at the moment, but I know they added someone to play with Justin Jefferson. So it's really going to come down to run game. I think Najee Harris is really going to be the difference maker in this game. I hope he is. Otherwise, it's going to be a loss. And that leads us to the final opponent, and that's also another complete blowout loss to Kansas City. I don't know how they did it this offseason. They basically took their aging tackles and swapped them out with younger tackles, which was the reason they lost in the playoffs. Um, oh, not even playoff, Super Bowl. I mean, this is a Super Bowl team the last 2 years in a row. The reason they lost to Tampa Bay is they had no offensive line. Both their tackles were injured, and Tampa Bay was just getting by their like fourth and fifth string tackles like it was no big deal because it wasn't. Um, they've addressed that not only with their guys just not being injured, but with replacing them with better and younger players. Patrick Mahomes is, if not the best quarterback in the league, the second best quarterback in the league, and we're playing both of them. Actually, we're playing the top three, I would say. Um, so it's not going to be an easy schedule, and we definitely drew a really hard schedule, getting the first, second, and third best quarterbacks all on away games, and probably a top five quarterback, if not sixth or seventh. I don't know where you would put him compared to. I'm trying to think of who you would rate above Justin Allen, Tom Brady, or not Justin Allen, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, maybe Lamar Jackson. That's probably about it at this point. So yeah, we have a definitely tough draw. If we look at this, then 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's an 8-9 record for the Steelers' first losing season under Mike Tomlin. When I was talking to folks before I did this, I was saying 7-10. I still think one of these likely wins, or even one of these playoff splits or conference splits, is going to go to a double loss. I'm still going to stick by, even though unfortunately my bracketology shows 8-9. I still think one of these likely wins does end up sliding. I think 7-10 is the most likely record, although 8-9 is also a possibility. But like I said, I was playing optimistic with Chicago. If Justin Fields is starting, that's a loss. If the Broncos figure out their quarterback situation, that's a loss. If Cleveland plays as good as I think they could, that's a loss. That leaves us with a 5-12 now record. I mean, it could be an absolute disaster for the Steelers this year. My assumptions here are best case scenarios, and that's an 8-9 record. That's missing the playoffs. And honestly, that's going to do more damage to the team than if this would happen. This is best case scenario for us because this gives us prime draft picks next year, both in the first and second rounds. We would easily be able to move up into the top. If this doesn't give us a top 10 pick, we would be maybe 11th or 12th pick overall. We'd be able to move into the top five, draft a quarterback to replace Ben. This is honestly the best case scenario with us only winning 5 games. Um, and if Ben gets hurt or our O line doesn't shape up, then this is honestly a super easy situation to have happen. Again, Justin Fields, I'm assuming Andy Dalton's still going to be the starter for the first half of the year. Only reason we win that game, Denver is a very, very low confidence pick there. And I still think we do manage to beat Cleveland at home. I think the Steelers players alone, the heart that's going to be into that game, they're not going to want to lose that many games in a row to Cleveland. Since we lost to them at the end of last year. They're not going to want to go like 0-3, 0-4 against Cleveland. That's going to be a huge blow to everyone's confidence if that happens. That's the only reason I think they got out a home win. But talent wise and coaching wise, coaching is the biggest deal here. They outcoached us like crazy last year. If you go back and watch the first game where we basically got Baker Mayfield benched because our defense was so dominant and our players were so good, and then you see what Kevin Stefanski did coaching wise to make a difference later in the year, that's what a coach is supposed to do. If you get beat, he's supposed to figure out ways to neutralize your impact players and make your impact players matter more. He did that. Tomlin did not. Tomlin never does. So that is where I think we are going to finish the year. Realistically, I think we're going to be a 7-10 team. Worst case scenario, which is best case scenario for our draft stock, is 5-12. Best case scenario is 9-8 and maybe the seventh seed in the playoffs. And again, best case scenario for 2021 as far as playoff seeding and win loss record is also the worst case scenario for 2022. If we go 9-8 and make borderline playoff run, we're going to be one and done. Our quarterback at 40 years old is not going to play into January. Not well, anyways. If you looked at his knee anytime in the second half of last year, the dude couldn't walk. If you can't walk, you can't throw a football. You can't plant. You can't throw. It's not possible. He's not going to go into January with a healthy knee and a healthy arm. His arm was shredded 2 years ago. His knee was shredded last year. He limped it out. He should have retired. I did want to cover why I feel the 2021 Steelers will be I don't want to say inferior, I guess a worse team than the 2020 Steelers were when we started 11-0. But we also did go 4-5 in the last 5 games, including the playoffs. So it's not really something to write home about when that's how you finish the season. First of all, the key losses on defense. Bud Dupree, he's not getting replaced with what we have on the roster unless the kid Quincy Roche ends up being an absolute beast and a steal from the 6th round. We seen Highsmith last year when Bud Dupree left the Steelers with that ACL injury, and there was a notable drop off. Look at our backfield. We're bringing back Joe Hayden, but he's a year older. He's going to be 33, I think, halfway through the season. Our safeties are fine. Minka Fitzpatrick is great. He's a Pro Bowler. Terrell Edmonds was a huge reach for a first-round pick and has been an okay to solid starter, but never great or even what I would say good for strong safety. Not when you are following in the footsteps of players like Troy Polamalu specifically. That's a lot to live up to for any player, but that's kind of what we have seen as a safety position with the modern Steelers, and that's not Edmonds at all, not even close. On the other side from Hayden was Steven Nelson. Steven Nelson was rated as a top 10 cornerback by Pro Football Focus, I think the 9th overall cornerback. And that looks at how many times he's targeted on his side of the field and what the completion percentage is when he is targeted. Top 10 player in the league, we cut him. Why did we cut him? So we could afford Juju Smith-Schuster. Did we need Juju when we have James Washington, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool? In my opinion, we absolutely did not need Juju. That was a signing I did not understand, and it made way less sense when the following week we had to cut Steven Nelson to get back under the cap. I don't get it. I don't even kind of get it because now we have no one to play on the left side of the field. We also lost Mike Hilton, who was our slot cornerback and our blitzing specialist, because neither one of our safeties are great blitzers. So he was kind of our blitzer from the backfield, the defensive backfield, that is. We don't have that anymore. What we do have is Cam Sutton, who played well as a slot corner when Mike Hilton was out. He doesn't have the blitzing capability, but he's certainly a fine slot corner. What he's not is an outside corner. When he's been asked to play that, I don't think he's panned out very well in that position. I think his side speed and tools make him a slot corner, which is fine. In today's NFL, you need 3 cornerbacks who can all play. Most teams either start a slot wide receiver or employ it 50% of the time or higher. So you need to employ a slot corner 50% of the times or higher. So it's basically a starting position now to have 3 cornerbacks. That might be where Hilton slides in, is starting slot. That's probably where he's going to hopefully slide in, which would leave James Pierre or Justin Lane to slide into the left cornerback. They've got, I guess, more of the size and tools for that role. Justin Lane was a 3rd-round pick, I believe, last year. Really fizzled out and got arrested in the offseason. So while he may be on the team, he may be suspended. He may not even make the team. And James Pierre is an undrafted free agent who showed some promise, but he's not going to replace a top 10 cornerback in his first year seeing major play time coming from an undrafted free agent. That would be almost miraculous. So our cornerbacks are way, way weaker. Our edge rushes considerably weaker. All of our Defensive line is a year older, including Cam Hayward, who's getting towards the back nine of his playing career. Offensively, obviously, we lost a lot of O-line. We lost Villanueva. We lost Pouncey. We lost our top substitute in Filer. We brought in probably a guy that can be Filer's replacement and more. We brought in someone who maybe can fill in for Pouncey in 2 or 3 years in Green, both through the draft, both in the mid rounds. No one who's going to step up and be as good as those two players year one. At least it'd be unlikely that they do with our draft pedigree. They're not first, second round picks. That's usually where you can kind of sneak in someone the first year as a starter and not lose anything, or maybe even be an upgrade over the person that played there the previous year. You're not going to have that this year. These are third and fourth round picks. These are people that were passed up by other teams for a reason. They were passed up by us in earlier rounds for a reason. It's not like we had a first round grade on Green. He's not a first round center. He's a kid that's going to take some time, who's played more guard than center in his college career. For him to be a starting center, I think BJ Finney is this year, and maybe Green is next year. We're going to have a weaker O-line this year than we had last year. And last year, it was a massive weakness for us. Ben's going to be running for his life against good defenses. Najee Harris is going to have to create his own holes against good defenses. It's an O-line that can do some work when it's playing a subpar defense, but it's also an O-line that is not going to make special things happen against great defenses. They're not going to hold back premium edge rushers with the tackles that we have, assuming they don't blow their knees out again this year. So that's the reasons why I think the 2021 Steelers are going to be a large step down over the 2020 Steelers. It's unfortunate. A lot of these players, it may be their last seasons, at least in Pittsburgh. Specifically Ben. I don't really understand why he came back. He said he wants to lead this team to one more Super Bowl before he walks away. I would love to hear the sit-down interview where he thinks that we're a better team in 2021 than we were in 2020 when we got embarrassed in the first round of the playoffs. I don't see it. I don't see in any position other than running back where we've improved. And even though we've improved greatly in that running back position, we've got a worse O-line, an older D-line, a worse edge rushing unit, and a worse backfield, defensive backfield. And we've got the same receivers. So there's one position where we've stayed consistent. Our quarterback's older. There's about 5 positions where we've taken a step back as far as age or just losing players. It's not going to be a better year. So that is my thoughts on the overall state of the Steelers and why I think the win-loss record is going to shape up the way it is. Thank you guys for watching the video. That was the predictions for the Steelers 2021 season win-loss record. If you have any suggestions for what to do for the next sports drop, please let me know in the comments below. And as always, we will see you next time.